Our team, so we're back, of course, talk about some more, maybe Final Fantasy. So what we have is a recent leak coming from the Snitch. I'm sure most of you know who that is. Apparently they had retired like a month ago or something from leaking game information, but then they have like a private Discord or a Discord or something, and they started, I guess, leaking again. Whatever the case. So anyways, they dropped this on their Discord server that says, a reliable source has DM'd me on Twitter to say that PlayStation is about to announce third-party stuff very soon. As was actually pointed out by the Insider Gaming article, this wasn't technically their leak because it's coming from a reliable source of theirs, but still, obviously, the Snitch leak and stuff or talking about stuff is going to grab the headlines. I believe the biggest rumor coming from this right now is that Metal Gear Solid Remake / remaster / whatever the hell it's supposed to be, which is pretty exciting. I've played Metal Gear Solid. I've played like one or two of the ones on PlayStation 2, and I played like Metal Gear Solid 4 with the boys back in the day. But I never really got super into the franchise, so like a newer version of the OG PS1 Metal Gear Solid, like that'd be pretty good, man, whether it's a remake, remaster, whatever. And apparently the rumor of a Metal Gear Solid remake has existed for quite a while now, at least a month or more at this point. There was a leaker who has kind of a mixed reputation, Area Jug Ones, who had said that we should be hearing something between February and March, and then we also had like Blue Point dropping some sort of teaser that may or may not be Metal Gear Solid. It could also be like Bloodborne 2, which some people are speculating on. And then you had actually the voice actor for Raiden very recently more or less confirming that something is happening. So Quinn Flynn, which is honestly a pretty goddamn cool name, by the way, had dropped a video on Twitter promoting their cameo, and people were in the replies talking about like the anniversary for Metal Gear Rising 2 coming up, and he replies simply, stay tuned for things to be announced in the coming weeks. And obviously he works very closely with this franchise, so it's not confirmation of a Metal Gear Solid remake, but at least seems to be confirmation that something is happening with the franchise very, very soon. Another possibility here is the Silent Hill franchise, which there's already like 3 or 4 games that were announced back whenever they did that like live stream event. There's also, I believe, supposed to be some unannounced Silent Hill projects, but specifically, at least in this case, it could be like Silent Hill 2 Remake, which we've only had that reveal trailer for. That's obviously a third-party game that is exclusive to PlayStation, so maybe whatever is happening in the future, they might give us another trailer potentially. But moving on from all of that, as it pertains to this channel, when we're talking about PlayStation, we're talking about Sony, we're talking about third-party games and studios, we're obviously talking about Square Enix and Final Fantasy, right? Like, when it comes to that franchise, if we're excluding Crisis Core Reunion for the last few years, last several years, whatever you want to say, like, they've been PlayStation exclusive, right? Remake was PS4 exclusive, then Integrated PS5 exclusive, and 16's PS5 exclusive. The upcoming Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth is PS5 exclusive, which I do want to touch on something kind of weird towards the end of the video about Rebirth, something that involves the Snitch as well. So the current rumor right now, or maybe idea, is that there could be like a surprise state of play coming up soon. And it's been a while since we've had one. It's been since like September 2022. So it's been quite some time. And maybe it'll be like a state of play that involves third-party games and studios exclusively. And obviously that could be something for the Final Fantasy franchise, something Square Enix related. We could get like maybe a new trailer for Final Fantasy 16, maybe a new trailer for Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. It's been a long time since we had that, right? We haven't had a trailer since the reveal, since June 2022. Maybe they finally revealed that Final Fantasy 9 Remake, potentially. Now, really quickly, though, would a 9 Remake be PlayStation exclusive? That kind of comes down to what the game is to a certain degree. Like, we talked about this with the last video and previous videos where we've talked about 9 Remake. Is it a 9 Remake in the vein of 7 Remake, or is it a 9 Remake that's just a graphical visual overhaul? That would kind of pertain. Because if it's like a massive project that's going to be potentially multiple games long, like 7 Remake, maybe that's something they want to keep PlayStation exclusive, right, to try to help sell consoles. Now, I don't know how much of a console seller 9 Remake would be, because 9 is obviously very popular. It's one of my personal favorite Final Fantasy games, but also back in the day, it didn't really sell that well, like in comparison to 7 and 8. It actually sold somewhere around the halfway point, maybe a little more, a little less than what 8 had sold, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, considering all the hate that Final Fantasy 8 has received over the years, that as beloved as Final Fantasy 9 seems to be within the community, it actually didn't do that well back in the day. But if a 9 Remake is simply just a visual overhaul, which I'd be perfectly fine with, like remade in like Unreal Engine 4 or 5, or maybe for some goddamn reason they want to use the Luminous engine, like that would probably come to every platform. I feel like there's no reason to make that console exclusive, but who knows. But if there's a theoretical state of play coming up, and they do have a 9 Remake there, regardless of what kind of remake it is, whether it's graphics or full-on remake like 7 Remake, it doesn't necessarily have to be console exclusive, because they have games that state of play that aren't just exclusive to PlayStation, right? Even the last state of play back in September had like Tekken 8, for example, and that game's coming out on PlayStation 5, but also Series X and S and Windows. Other than obviously the Final Fantasy games, I don't really keep up too much with what Square Enix is doing, but in terms of like third-party games that come to mind, Kingdom Hearts, obviously. Kingdom Hearts 4 got revealed in April of 2022. Now, I have no idea at all when they would ever want to show more of this game. I don't keep up with the franchise. You guys would know more of that than I ever would. And obviously, we got 16 coming up, and a potential 9 Remake coming up, and we got 7 Rebirth coming up. So I don't know when they would really want to start marketing and releasing Kingdom Hearts 4. But maybe that's something too, potentially. Maybe they want to throw another teaser trailer out there, release window, or something along those lines. And actually, speaking of Kingdom Hearts, I'm sure most of the Kingdom Hearts fans out there would already know this, but Missy Link has like a beta or something happening. I've seen it all over Twitter, and some shit got leaked to that game. So if you haven't checked that out and you want to, you can. I think that's more or less the discussion for like this channel when it comes to this, Final Fantasy and stuff, obviously Square Enix. In terms of going outside of Square Enix, there's probably a lot of games we could talk about in the list here. The third-party games that could potentially be at a theoretical upcoming state of play. But I think the most likely one, at least based on what I've seen online, is that Metal Gear Solid Remake. That's like almost a guarantee, I feel like. But hopefully, if there is a state of play coming up at some point, there would be something for 16 or Rebirth there. Now, going back to our last video, there's that rumored, and it's a very not likely rumored, that there's like a 35th anniversary event coming up that's going to have a lot of shit at it, apparently. But if that ends up being a thing, if it ends up being true, then they probably want to save anything involving the Final Fantasy franchise for that, obviously. So as for the Rebirth thing I alluded to earlier in the video, I was reading over the interview the Insider Gaming did with the Snitch back in December, right? Whenever he was talking about retiring, they kind of asked him why. Essentially, he's, I guess, tired of it, bored of it, or whatever. He didn't just want to do that all the time, and apparently he's a busy person IRL. But they asked him a particular question, and he used Rebirth as an example for the answer. And I thought that was kind of a little interesting. So they asked him, why did you choose to leak games with cryptic tweets instead of writing for a publication where presumably you'd make money from them? Because it's the most fun. What is the use of posting Final Fantasy Rebirth, I'm assuming he means 7 Rebirth, is coming to X platforms? Yes, I could make money, probably gain 10k new followers, and boost my ego, but then again, it's not fun. Now, before we continue, I'm not putting too much stock into this, right? I just want to have a discussion about it because I thought it was kind of interesting, because the Snitch could have used a million examples of games, and I thought it was pretty weird that that's the default that he went to, especially considering that he has a history with this franchise, because he actually tweeted this out the day before the 25th anniversary livestream. And I believe this tweet was meant to be for Crisis Core Reunion, not necessarily Rebirth or Remake or anything, though obviously the livestream did give us Remake coming to Steam, and then obviously we did get a trailer for Rebirth. But the emojis that he used in the tweet seemed to imply PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC, which would obviously be Crisis Core Reunion. But anyways, the example that he used, it got me thinking about what is Rebirth coming on? Because, now that I think about it, they've talked about Remake Part 2 back in the day before we ever knew what Rebirth was, that it was going to be PS5 exclusive, right? But they've used it in the vein that it's not coming to last gen. Like, they're talking about it's PS5 exclusive for the technology, for the SSD and stuff like that, right? I don't think they've ever just outright said it's only coming to PlayStation at all on launch. And if you actually go back to the reveal trailer for Rebirth from the 25th anniversary, at the end they show a PS5 logo. But nowhere on the screen does it talk about it being PlayStation exclusive for a set amount of time. Which is very different from, let's say the Remake reveal back in 2015 when that was initially shown off. They even told you at the end of the reveal trailer, play it first on PlayStation 4, right? We knew that a long, long time ago. And more recently with something like 16. At the end of that trailer, it tells you it's exclusive to PS5 for a set amount of time. So I thought that was particularly interesting because I never took note of the end of the Rebirth trailer with the exclusivity, right? They show the PS5 logo, right? But they don't talk about a time frame. They don't even mention it being PS5 exclusive at all. They just show the logo. So it kind of makes you wonder with them dropping, Integrate on Epic and Steam, right? That's on PC now. They got a fan base on that platform. If they don't also plan on dropping Rebirth on PS5 and PC at launch. And look, like I said before we got into this discussion, it might mean absolutely nothing, but the Snitch is all about giving the cryptic details, right? And why would he use that game specifically in an interview? I just thought it was a little weird. But also the fact that they've never touched on the actual exclusivity or anything like that, at least in the trailer that we got for Rebirth. And when they talked about Rebirth being PS5 exclusive, they're more so saying that it's not coming to last gen. They didn't want to use the PS4 technology. That's all I'm going to say on it. I'm not going to put too much stock into the discussion. I just thought it was a little interesting observation, something I never even noticed with the Rebirth trailer. So I'll pass off to you guys, okay? For one, with this third-party reveals happening soon, apparently, what do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be something Silent Hill related, Metal Gear Solid? Do you think there's any chance that we get something for Final Fantasy there? What are the odds of a Kingdom Hearts? But also, if you do want to touch on this ending part with the Rebirth launch and stuff like that, what are the odds you think that they could drop the game also on PC at launch? That's the video, my dudes. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DavidYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain or leave it like Cobain.